Everfree Guardian, Chapter 6, Diamond's Genocide.
You want me to do what?
Applejack and Nathan Schmidt stood outside of a new building, one the latter had rarely ever seen inside of Ponyville. It took the shape of a carousel of some sort, the dome at the top reminding him of the rides that he used to take at the fairgrounds on Earth when he was little. The building itself was the most stunning of any structure he'd seen in Ponyville. Unlike the usual housing, which was made of wood and steel, this carousel building looked to be made of marble and various stylistic minerals. It was honestly impressive and also baffling that Nate had ever seen this building before, considering it stuck out like a sore thumb. Then again, Nate's never been to this side of Ponyville. The building they were at was on the east side of town. All of the pathways and roads he took drifted south towards the Everfree forest. It was his comfort zone, so to speak, a set of channels that he'd wandered down without getting into much trouble. Speaking of trouble, the debacle with Zecora has been cleared up, and Ponyville welcomed the zebra after apologizing profusely for their bigoted behavior and reactions to her entering town. With the stalls and stores now open to her, Zecora has no more need for Nate to continue gathering herbs for her. Now she can put her stockpile of bits to better use than just storing it and letting it collect dust. And Nate's source of potions and ingredients now came at a different cost every now and again. With the trade now changed, Nate found himself in a predicament. While he was nowhere near depleted of ammunition, he was running out of material to scrounge up from the forest. All the gunpowder substitutes, the minerals, the metals, and plastics, they were all becoming more and more scarce with each scavenge hunt for them. This worried Nate, as without his guns, he felt as if he was almost completely defenseless. Sure, he can fight with swords, clubs, and just about anything he can swing or punch with, but getting up close to something that withholds magic at its fingertips isn't easy, and oftentimes more dangerous than keeping them at range. He needed another spot to find the materials. He needed to continue making homemade ammunition. As shitty as it is compared to the professionally made cartridges he had arriving in this place, something was better than nothing, and he'd be hard-pressed to be caught with his pants down and clips empty out in the Everfree. Nate had also been carrying those flasks that he found around quite often. Already found in his backpack, he keeps them at the bottom of his main pocket. For some reason, he's compelled to keep the two sources of pure magic close. He couldn't tell what it was, but it felt as if the two sources called to him, urged him to take them with him on his hikes through the forest. But he knows not why. But anyhow, that all led to now. Applejack had a special assignment for Nate to help with, and in exchange for assisting, she'd pay him triple for 3 weeks. How can you pass that up? Well,
I need you to help out another friend of mine, one of the gals that you saw back in Zecora's hut. Her name's Rarity.
Nate gazed towards the farm mare, his distaste for her favor evident, even though she couldn't see his face.
Oh, don't give me that look, Sugar Cube. Rarity's a bit dramatic, but she's trustworthy. I wouldn't have asked you to come all this way if I thought it would put you or your lifestyle in jeopardy.
He shook his head as they approached the door. Jesus Christ, Applejack, you could have at least said something the day before so I could have prepared better.
Well, that's the thing. I just got a letter from her this morning. Considering how frantic she is in her writing, I assumed this was important. Unfortunately, though, I can't stay. Big Mac spotted a heap of trees out in the orchard that have gone bad, and we need to get rid of them as fast as possible before their rotten magic spreads to the other trees around them.
They blinked when that description graced his ears. Trees can get infected by the rot that consumed its neighboring brethren? That doesn't make much sense. But then again, he's seen oddities worse in the Everfree, so it's not like this was anything new. This fairy tale land of technicolored horses has its own rules, and he's yet to know it all. Shrugging off the strangeness of it all, he glanced at Applejack as she knocked on Rarity's door.
And I take it you want me to sit in for you like I did when taking Apple Bloom to school that one time?
If y'all can spare the time, Sugar Cube, plus I'm paying you triple for the next few weeks. Can't really say no to that, can ya?
He hummed, figuring he really couldn't, considering his material situation was now feeding off of whatever currency he's accumulated since working with Applejack in the last month or so.
Fine, but this is the last friend of yours I'm meeting until I'm more content with leaving the Everfree again. I don't want to walk out and find another Gilda among the crowd, AJ.
She rose her hands in defense as they entered the boutique.
Fair enough, Nate. After this, I'll leave you to it, and let you back out there on your own pace.
The human nodded as they examined the interior, finding it to be as classy and stylistic as the outside. Running back and forth was a white mare, a familiar one that wore clothing much fancier and proper than Applejack or Fluttershy. Her figure was to kill for. Seriously, if Fluttershy could give erections off of that adorable nature and lustful body, then Rarity could make some sorry bastard come in his pants by batting her eyelashes at them. However, the mare was too panicked to flaunt her sexual attraction and beauty onto others. She was frantically going back and forth with several items and gems levitated at her side as she zipped to and fro. The speed she was going could give the Pegasi a run for their money, and Applejack winced as she took off her hat.
Oh, shucks, she's at it again.
Again? Applejack motioned to the unicorn as she skidded up next to her sewing machine.
Every time Rarity has some big orders, she gets like this, especially if the due date is pitted closer than she'd anticipated to work around. Believe me, Sugar Cube, this is tame compared to a deadline running the next day.
They cringed, just knowing what Applejack meant by that. If this is how active the otherwise regal mare is when presented with a bit of stress, how bad would she get when the shit really hits the fan? This was not a question he needed answered, lest the whole village would implode. Be that as it may, Applejack took a step forward into the boutique, finally gaining Rarity's attention.
Oh, Applejack, you're right on time! Is your helper here today? I could really use some help right now. Why, what's got your panties in a bunch, Rarity?
The white-coated mare fanned herself before going back to the sewing machine, working diligently and quickly, but not fast enough to overload the machine.
Sapphire Shores came by earlier today.
Applejack blinked at the name.
Sapphire Shores? Ain't that the mare who sings them popular pop songs every pony's been getting into? Yes! She recently just made a huge boost in her name. Her face is practically all across Manhattan. She came by my shop looking for a new sensational uniform to wear on her tour.
Rarity pointed towards the curtains to her right, which barely concealed her latest creation. Inside was a white suit designed for the female demographic of pony kind, and with it came the diamond, rubies, emeralds, literally all the gems that you could find in common Equestria grounds as accessories. Seriously, this dress practically glistened in the dimmed light. Applejack had a good look at it before turning to her friend.
So, did she hate it? Oh my heavens, no, she absolutely adored it! Okay, so what's with all the fuss and I have to make 5 more in a week, all of them done up in different jewels!
Applejack cringed as she finally understood what Rarity needed help with. Gems were very easy to find if you're just looking for them at random, but finding a huge stockpile of the same ones is not as easy. In fact, culminating a small pile of the same gems can take a week if you don't find a spot with richer soil. You'd only ever know if you'd paid attention to how ground mists over with the gem's dazzling glimmer. Applejack herself knew no such place. There weren't even any spots around the orchard that had rich soil ripe for gems to grow in, but she knew someone who did.
Well, Rarity, I don't know where y'all can find a sweet spot for gems, but I have someone here who does.
Rarity's ears perked at the chance and swiftly turned to find her saving grace. Imagine her surprise when she found the very same monkey standing before a line of her male products, sifting through and looking at some of her wares.
Isn't that...
Applejack nodded.
He is, and I have a bit of a confession to make.
She motioned to Nate as his attention settled back on them.
This here is my employee, Nathan Schmidt. Colt's been working on my farm for about a month now. He ain't native to Equestria, so you can say he's a lot like Sakura. I see.
Applejack could see some measure of apprehension in her eyes as Rarity looked Nate up and down. Her caution warranted as she could spot one of his weapons clasped to his belt. Applejack ignored this, facing her employee, as Rarity eyed his clothing specifically.
Y'all got any good spots that Rarity can find gems, Sugar Cube?
Nate glanced down at the floor, raking through his mind for any locations that he'd spotted or encountered during his explorations and hunts in the Everfree. Unfortunately, there were no spots that were actually inside of the forest, but Nate had exited the forest from the south before, and if he's recalled the geography of Equestria correctly, he remembers seeing some fragments of glistening dirt. There's a spot just south of the Everfree forest. If we go now and take the path around, we would be there by mid-afternoon. Applejack smiled, ushering a hand out to Nate as she glanced at Rarity. The unicorn was still put off by the human, even though she can't really see what he is. He had this aura of mystery that put her on edge. Being a pony of gossip, she hated having secrets kept from her, but she was also smart enough to not push any pony to reveal them on her terms. Doing so would be unladylike after all. Taking a breath, the fashionista nodded.
Alright then, I suppose it wouldn't hurt. I am still a little uneasy around him. No offense, darling.
Nate narrowed his eyes, but didn't say anything as Rarity snapped her fingers, activating her magic. With a puff of light, she replaced her fancy clothing with that of a set fit for exploration, especially if one was to get their hands dirty. Beside her was also a wagon for the gems that she needed. Given that they were going to be at this location by mid-afternoon, Rarity assumed that they wouldn't find much, even in a patch of land rich with gems.
But I am not a choosy man right now. I need these gems, so I will take whatever help I can get.
She gave Applejack a side-eye.
Although I do want an explanation later, Applejack, as well as the names of those who knew about him as well. I'll do my best.
Applejack tipped her hat at them as she made for the door.
You two have fun now, you hear?
Nate deadpanned after his boss as she shut the door after herself, leaving him alone with the fashionista. Turning back to Rarity, he could still see that she was uncomfortable. However, knowing his task for today, he couldn't care less about how she felt.
You have a shovel?
She looked up at him as he took up the wagon's handle and began pulling it towards the door. Following suit after snapping herself from her stupor, she conjured up a simple shovel with the use of her magic, tailing after the human as they made their way towards the Everfree forest. He's gonna rack up more kills after this one, that's for sure. Though if he doesn't, I'll be shocked, but I'm pretty sure he still will anyway. Anywho, let's get on to our fearsome donators. Top donators are 630, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Only One Thing, and Dash of Evergreen. Rayden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rollins, Crazy Killer 557, Stu Hex, Swordbrother Mordred, Omicron Library, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Hatzaza, Rightful, Maverick, and many more awesome people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.